Hi everyone, my name is Ruby and I have a secret to tell you. Unfortunately, it's not much of a secret anymore because my mother's lies were eventually exposed. Her deception caused a lot of damage, which taught me a valuable lesson. Lies may work in the present, but they have no future. Growing up, I had a seemingly normal life with my dad, who was an amazing mentor and role model. However, my mother was never around, and she rarely expressed love or affection towards me. I could never understand why she acted this way, but eventually her lies caught up with her. Despite the damage they caused, I learned a valuable lesson about the importance of honesty. I grew up with a mother who was always distant and never seemed to care about my life. She often went out with her friends, shopped for expensive things, or partied all night long. She never cooked or cleaned, helped me with my homework, or even kissed me goodnight. It was just the norm for me, and I never gave it much attention until one day I found out the reason behind her odd behavior. She had been keeping a dark secret for 15 years that eventually came out and changed everything. As I grew older, my mother became even more distant and disapproving of everything I did. Despite my best efforts to be a good daughter, she only cared about herself and her own desires. It pains me to say that our relationship has never been the same since. It was always apparent that there was tension between my mother and father. They never hugged or smiled at each other, and it's been like that for ages. I've come to realize that this is not how a normal relationship between parents should be. Nowadays, they barely speak to each other, which makes dinner evenings very awkward and uncomfortable. My mom has never worked a day in her life, and that luxurious lifestyle that she enjoyed was solely because of my dad's hard work. He was always busy and didn't have enough time to give my mom the attention she craved. Eventually, their marriage hit rock bottom. Their relationship had completely fallen apart because when Dad was home, he was either sleeping or reading alone. It was unfortunate that my mom had high demands and expectations. She used to scream at my dad for not taking out the trash, for not seeing the mess in the house, and for not making enough money. My poor dad never said anything to her until one day he had enough and left us. But before he left, he whispered in my ear that everything would be all right in the end. I blamed him for leaving me alone with my mom and cried for nearly a month, thinking I had lost him for good. As days and weeks went by, my mom's behavior became more and more erratic. She would tell me to get out of the room, saying she didn't want to see me, and repeated those phrases for 2 whole months. Then, one day, she finally came out of her room, seemingly out of nowhere. She was actually smiling, and I couldn't believe my eyes. I asked her if everything was okay because she seemed better. Without any hesitation, she replied, "I'm perfect, Ruby. I figured out a way to bring Dad back." I was overjoyed. This meant that we were going to be a family again. That day, Mom had the brightest smile on her face, and I couldn't figure out why until she told me, "I'm pregnant, Ruby." She showed me the positive test, and I couldn't believe it. I had always wanted a baby brother or sister, and I honestly believed that Dad would finally come back when he hears the news. Mom and I decided to break the news to Dad together. She advised me to call Dad and request him to visit the house for a conversation. He agreed to come over, and after exchanging pleasantries for about 30 minutes, Mom instructed me to break the big news to him. Overwhelmed with joy, I screamed, "We're going to have a baby," with tears in my eyes. However, I failed to notice that he didn't even flinch at the news, and instead, I assumed that he was in shock and would be fine soon. I continued to celebrate my happiness. A week later, Dad returned home, and for the first time, things started getting better for the family. Mom's behavior changed, and she stopped being cold and demanding. She started showing more respect towards Dad. Later, she returned from a doctor's appointment with good news that the pregnancy was progressing perfectly. We were ecstatic to learn that we were expecting a baby girl. It was going to be a sister for me finally. I could see my mom's belly growing beautifully 5 months later. We decided to name the baby Ellie and organized a baby shower with our closest friends. Everyone had a great time at the party except for my dad, who didn't seem himself. I figured he still couldn't believe that he was going to be a father again. Later that evening, after the party had ended, I went upstairs to look for my phone. Upon realizing it was downstairs, I returned and overheard my mom having a secretive conversation with her best friend. "I can't believe it worked," she said. "They actually believe I'm pregnant." The pregnancy test was rigged. My mom had drawn another line with a red pencil to make me believe that it was a real test, and I fell for it. Instantly, I froze. I couldn't move my arms or legs and just stood there hoping to wake up from a really bad nightmare. Oh my God, Mom, why would you do that? I felt angry and frustrated. I just couldn't believe she would do such a terrifying thing. Pretending to be pregnant just to reconcile with Dad was a thought that consumed me. I desperately wished to confess the truth, but my 14-year-old self felt powerless. What if he didn't take me seriously? So, for another agonizing 2 months, I remained silent, helplessly observing as my mother's belly continued to expand. Incredibly surreal, isn't it? I knew I had to uncover the truth. It was time to seize control of the situation. The following morning, while she was in the shower, I stealthily entered her room. I strategically positioned my phone above the TV, concealed amidst a stack of books to evade her notice. With a quick press of the record button, I darted under the bed as time was not on my side. Can you believe there were 10 pillows of different sizes under the bed? They were all used by my mom during different stages of her pregnancy. One day, she got out of the shower, got dressed, and reached under the bed to grab one of the pillows. I was hiding under the bed, but thankfully she didn't reach far enough to sense my presence. That particular day was perhaps the most peculiar of all the days in my life, as I found myself in a situation where I had to confront her. I had to look her in the eyes and pretend that I still believed that she was pregnant. As she was getting dressed, she started shouting for me, asking where I was, and I was hiding right there, under the bed, when all of a sudden the phone that was recording her started beeping. Oh no! Luckily, my mom thought the sound was coming from another room, so she left to check it out. This gave me the perfect opportunity to grab the recording, stop it, turn it off, and pretend I had just entered the room. I said, "I'm right here, Mom." At that moment, as she looked straight into my eyes, I could sense that she knew I had uncovered her lie. However, she didn't say anything and just left, slamming the door behind her. Later that evening, before my mom returned home from yet another fake appointment, I decided to show the recording to my dad. I couldn't keep my mom's secret any longer. It was eating me up inside. I approached my dad and said, "You have to press play, Dad. And please, don't hold it against me." He watched the video through to the end, and believe it or not, he burst into laughter afterward. He said, "Oh, Ruby, I knew about your mom's deception from the very beginning." I was taken aback and I asked, "You knew all along and you didn't say anything." It turned out that Dad had only agreed to reconcile with Mom to stay close to me. Furthermore, he had been contemplating asking Mom for a divorce for a while, but he recognized that he couldn't secure full custody without proving that she was unfit to raise a teenage girl. So he patiently waited to see how her elaborate scheme would unfold. Now, armed with all the evidence he needed, he could finally present a strong case to a lawyer to demonstrate Mom's serious psychological issues. I am proud to say that my dad is the best and smartest dad in the world. However, the next day, his lawyer came by our house to deliver some shocking news to my mother. To her surprise, the papers in front of her were divorce papers. The lawyer provided evidence that proved that my dad was unable to have children anymore, and we even showed her a video as proof. My mother burst into tears, realizing that her plan had failed. She had been lying all along and begged for forgiveness, but unfortunately, she did not receive any. I have to commend my dad for his patience, for he had known about the lie all this time, and yet he continued to live with us for nearly 5 months. He is a really tough guy, and I respect him a lot for that. Before long, I began to realize that my mom's life hadn't been easy either. In fact, I started to grasp the reasons behind her troubled nature. On the day of the court hearing, my mom made a decision to unveil a secret she had kept concealed for 15 years, a revelation that shattered my trust in her. As the courtroom drama unfolded, my mom boldly stood up and, with palpable anger, asserted that my father should not have custody of me. The bombshell she dropped left everyone present in the courtroom stunned, their whispers filling the air. My mother paid no heed to the commotion as she continued, "Yes, that's right. We got married because he believed I was carrying his child." It was a colossal secret that had gnawed at me from within for 15 long years. She looked at me and said, "That's right, Ruby. Go take a DNA test and you'll see." I was left speechless. Could it be true? I glanced at my dad, who was angry. "You are a liar. First you fake your pregnancy, and now this. No test in the world can deny that I'm not Ruby's dad, you monster," he yelled. In that moment, I made a decision. I realized that I didn't even want to know the truth because the person standing in front of me was my dad. That's right, I said confidently. I don't believe you and I don't care what you say. This person loves me more than anyone else in the world, and he's my dad. Everyone was surprised by my response. It's been a year since I moved in with my dad, and I've never been happier. However, my mother lost the case and doesn't have any right to visit me now. It's a twisted situation, isn't it? I know I'm only 14 and shouldn't judge, but what my mom did was not okay. What kind of mother treats her daughter like that? Right now, I can't forgive her for what she did. Maybe I don't have the maturity to do it, or perhaps she doesn't deserve my forgiveness.